And we're live. Mr. Jack, what's happening?
Logan, doing good. How about yourself?
I'm well. Thanks for making time to come online here and have a conversation.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
This is a long time coming, perhaps too long.
Agreed. Hopefully, the first of many, too. No doubt we've have no shortage of stuff to talk about, discuss, kind of share just our thoughts on. Uh, can't count how many times we've had like an hour long discussion of tangents and stuff, and being like, "Man, I wish we just recorded that." So
100%.
I'm excited for it.
Me too. For those watching, the background between Mr. Jack and I goes back several years. Jack is an esteemed colleague, a co founder, and a partner with me on Valdeon. We started the business together. We've been running it full time for almost 5 years.
Almost five. Yeah.
Almost 5 years through COVID lockdowns and loss of tech partners and loss of angel investment and pivots and unexpected twists and turns. We have navigated the landscape, and we've learned a lot along the way.
Definitely so. The life of the entrepreneur, right?
Many ups,
Yeah,
many downs.
indeed. Indeed. The ones who make it are the ones that stay the course, though, right? So,
Yes,
yeah,
there's been many times. I think towards the end of a long day or a long week, you and I are reflecting, and after taking one or more unexpected blows, negative blows, right? Where we just say we just stay in it. If we can just
yeah,
keep going, there's going to be another high. There's going to be another win. If we get a no, it's just one no closer to the eventual yes, to the eventual success.
100%. And the failures are the best learnings out there, right?
It's true.
Uh, you know, I think anybody that fails in this space is pretty determined not to repeat that, right?
Yes,
So take extra precautions to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself.
100%. First of many, but today our thinking is we focus on where we're at and where we've come from, the origin story. I'd love to focus the discussion on your perspective of our origin story, how you came to be in the place where we joined forces many years ago at the Startup Accelerator in Boca Tech Runway, and frame the discussion through that lens.
Absolutely. That sounds good. Should I go ahead and get into it? I'll pick a
By all
starting point.
means, we can rewind all the way back to where were you at in your life before the Valdeon days?
Absolutely. So again, my name is John Mueller Hickler. Everybody knows me as Jack, though, the man with too many names, two first names, two last names. Yeah, and like Logan said, we've been working together for almost 5 years now. We started working together towards the end of 2019, and I actually met him through what was initially an internship opportunity to just kind of explore if it would be a good fit. I kind of wanted to get some experience in the startup realm. But let's rewind a little bit before that. Um, so before I had met Logan, I had just wrapped with school, was kind of taking some time off to decide what I wanted to do. I actually went to UCF and got a degree in anthropology. My original plan was to, I mean, the main goal was I've always been interested in archaeology, in history, in anthropology, archaeology being the main piece that I was interested in. So, majoring in anthropology, archaeology is a subset of that. Um, and I was in a place where, taking the next step in that sort of journey was going to be a big commitment, both time wise, financially. It's a big decision, and it's not the most secure route. right? To be an archaeologist, they say your day job is teaching, right? So the route would have been be a history teacher, anthropology teacher to sustain, and then chart kind of field research trips when possible throughout the year. So if a semester you aren't teaching, go do field research for a few months. um, and of course, to get into that, you are usually brought in a sort of observational capacity at first, sort of an assistant to the people who have been doing this for years. So it takes quite a few years of ramp up to where you're actually in it as an anthropologist or archaeologist. So it was really going to be getting masters in anthropology, um, taking any field research opportunities that I could throughout my learnings, and then transitioning into a teaching role, preferably at university for either anthropology or history. And the, I guess, end goal for that after, again, archaeology, anthropology stuff, it's not full time year round stuff. It's very demanding. You're living in foreign places, doing research, and, you still need a means to sustain yourself outside of it as well, in many cases. So, the sort of dream job, prior to retirement, kind of like destination would have been landing work in a museum. I've always been super interested in that. Most desirable role in a museum, or at least I think for many, is a curator, kind of a high-ranking position where you oversee, collections of artifacts, manage them, manage acquisition, upkeep, and display, that sort of stuff. And again, a lot of people want to do it. There's a limited amount of museums, and even more limited amount of people in the curator position. So that's kind of the always striving for that, but realistically, pretty difficult to achieve. So, anyways, like I said, I was kind of on the back end of receiving my bachelor's degree, and frankly, my work experience was pretty fragmented, and uh, there wasn't too much of it. I had been pretty focused in school. That's a luxury, of course. So I had some jobs doing sort of user research, customer research, and stuff at for example, at one business called MyMela. Um, Done some sort of more like odd jobs, kind of working in a warehouse doing packaging and stuff like that. And I was at this point where I was making a pretty big, you know, life chartering decision of, man, am I really going to go back and spend this much more time in school, only then to have an occupation at school, right? So kind of cementing that environment as my life, basically. So, um, I was doing discussion with family. My dad at the time was running a independent coaching and consulting firm, and he had met a number of clients, and was saying, hey, there's potential opportunities here. I'd be happy to introduce you. And I believe it was right around that time, and I don't think he had just met you, but um, you know, I think you guys had probably met like a year before or something like that. And I believe he actually met you through meditation classes, right? My dad is big into meditation, fitness, and all that sort of stuff now. And I assume you guys hit it off because that was probably around the time where my dad was taking fitness very seriously, for, kind of having his, you know, um, time to he was really getting into meditation, fitness, bettering himself, and coincidentally meeting somebody at a meditation class that professionally was in the fitness industry. I imagine you
And
guys
the
hit it off.
veteran thing
Oh, as well, yes, yes,
is Hans is a big supporter of veterans.
him and I both. I think my whole
Indeed.
family, great respect for the veteran community. um, and I believe that was when you were working at Trainer Space, correct?
Sure. That's right.
Because before we met, he had actually mentioned you and Trainer Space before, and of course, being the good father he was like, "Oh, trying to get me into the gym with him and being like, hey, we can work out." And he was talking up the place quite a lot, saying, "Oh, it's so cool! It's super, modern, futuristic, high tech. It's run by veterans. These guys are super cool." Um, you know, at the time, I've always aspired to get in shape, be healthy. It's an ongoing struggle. So, I was always like, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, yeah. And, I think that was probably a while before we met that he kind of mentioned, I don't even know if he mentioned you by name specifically, but kind of trainer space and how he was, enjoying working out there and connecting with you guys. Anyways, fast forward a little bit, um, I guess towards the end of 2019, um, I was again talking with him, exploring options, and he said, "Hey, there's an interesting opportunity that doesn't necessarily need to be like a big investment of time. I know you're still deciding whether or not you know you are looking for a job, frankly, or going back to pursue education." So something in a internship capacity, something that you know had a kind of defined timeline, a period of saying, hey, we'll see how it goes, if it's a good fit, all that sort of stuff. So he said, you know, uh, funny enough, the guy that I mentioned, with in regards to trainer space, is actually doing a startup centered around machine learning, AI, and fitness. And I've always been very interested in the development of AI. I think back to that time now, and it was such in a different space. That was all
Yeah.
pre Chat GPT, image generation. We had the version -1 natural language processing with those articles that were nonsensical, kind of like
Yeah.
spam stuff, right? But I'd always been super interested in that. My brother actually worked with Magic Leap for a few years, so he was always showing cool stuff. We got like a demo product for Magic Leap, and so I know it's not AI, it's AR, but that whole sort of mixed reality space utilizing AI was always very interesting to me personally. So I said, you know what, that sounds like a pretty solid idea. So we scheduled a time to meet. I think we did a sort of initial introduction just to sort of be like, this is where we're at. This is what we're looking for, all this sort of stuff. I think you were pretty gracious in being lenient on the sort of what's to be expected, what you're working on. And that was one of my main takeaways is that, in our time working together, I feel like you've always been a leader that really encourages to have people work on what they're passionate about, what they're driven to. So um you know I that was something I appreciated right off the bat. And it seemed like, hey, let's give it a try for a little bit, let's see how this thing goes. So the onboarding process was mostly me learning about what it was you were building. At the time, it was uh, what's the easiest way to explain it? I'm sure many people have seen those fitness mirrors, right? There's a couple different brands where it's this big, kind of horizontal display that you hang on your wall for working out, in the home. And the idea was that there was going to be a camera on top that had machine vision to actually be able to track your movement, measure not only the quantity of reps and exercises, but also grade the quality, right? And that's obviously very important for a number of reasons. One of them being safety, right? So many people get hurt working out that, if your knees are pointing inward while you're doing squats, especially with weight, that can be a big problem. And also, I think it was just a cool concept, to be able to see kind of in real time, you know, how well, not only, see myself working out, but how well am I doing it, to, it's that sort of, real time, be able to see yourself improve as well. So I was pretty excited when I got a little bit more of the details and stuff. Um, got a chance pretty early on to meet with some of the folks in the, I'm going to butcher this name, machine learning. What was it? The lab out of FAU,
Yeah,
machine learning
machine
cognitive robotics
perception,
lab, machine perception
cognitive
and cognitive
robotics, and
robotics.
PCR.
That's right. And it was really cool to see the stuff that they were working on just already. Right. I remember being super excited, just being able to be in that space, see the stuff that they were working on, their willingness and excitement to be collaborating with us. Um, and then, of course, we had some connections from overseas. It was out of Cambridge University, right? And they had focused more so on um, what was it? Gait analysis, right? It was measuring and monitoring gait, which is the way that we walk and stuff, to determine. Maybe this is just one piece of it, but apparently there's some indications of greater health issues and stuff that can be determined from that. Also for physical therapy and recovery and all that sort of stuff. So we had some pretty cool partners that were pretty experienced
Yeah.
in the whole machine perception, machine learning, AI space. So
Pose estimation.
pose estimation, yeah, that's a phrase I haven't heard in a while. Like I heard that every day for a while.
Yeah.
So early stages, I was kind of pardon the pun, jack of all trades, kind of working in and out of various areas, even doing a little bit of work in Blender in those early days, mocking
Yes.
up some skeletal 3D models, um, and of course doing research, user research, competitive research, you know, and doing a lot of like documenting of information and bringing it in. And it was around that time that you introduced me to a lot of tools. We were getting into, we kind of had the tech people. And in the early days, I was kind of taking the position of like your right hand man on the sort of like business management and build out. Obviously we were seeking additional investors, that
Yes.
ongoing piece of it. So representing the business, having all of our research in place, and eventually being able to pitch it for additional investment. Right, kind of mapping out the proof of concept for the early stage technology as well. A lot of good times doing that, um, and we had accumulated quite a lot of documents, drafts, frameworks, all this sort of stuff that was it seemed like every time we're like, okay, let's work on this stuff. Okay, we'll spend 10 minutes unpacking all of these materials, getting them in one place so we can cross reference, see all this stuff, and actually get to work. Right. And it was, uh, yeah, you can do it that way. But I think that, it was not the most effective. And it was around that time that you introduced us to what would become a very pivotal tool in our career, Miro, which is, for
Miro.
those unfamiliar with it, is a virtual whiteboard, kind of like an open sandbox for design, for diagramming, bringing in files. Um, and I think that was what we liked about it. I mean, it's a little bit intimidating, right? You open it up, blank whiteboard, but the amount of freedom that it offered was like, okay, so we can kind of organize everything the way we want and see everything, have everything next to each other, report to stakeholders, to mentors that we had access to at the startup incubator. And, that was kind of the inception of our work, kind of building out the venture map. Um, I think we still have quite a few of those old boards with the mile long swim lanes and, all
Yep.
coming out of that sort of like core centerpiece with like the branching stuff. Um, Still pretty cool to look back. I like to think that our stuff has gotten a lot more visually appealing, a lot more comprehensible to people other than ourselves, which has proved a pretty useful, frankly mandatory thing. Uh,
Yeah.
so let's see. Yeah, so all
Jack,
this took. Oh, go ahead, please.
if I want to see if you can unpack a moment there because it's whenever I think about the old board, like the first board we ever made, there was a catalyst that took us from that first board to make a second board.
Yeah,
I you
so we
have
won't
had
name
to
names. There was a very generous mentor at
yes,
Tech Runway, and us being the people we were geeking out about frankly, the sort of stuff we were mapping out and building out in here, and we're like,
yes.
dude, we're like pros. Look at this. Everybody's working within Google Docs, got manual stuff pulling out of the briefcase, and we've got like everything. This sort of like command center, this overview of what we're working on, what we're talking about, and we're feeling pretty good about it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think you had a meeting with one of the mentors, and I remember being like, "This is cool, right? We have so much more than what he was expecting, right? He's expecting kind of like pitch deck sort of material, proof of concept, and some like
We're gonna
just
blow his socks
yeah,
off.
some market research and stuff. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
we've like been mapping out, so much more. And I remember you came out of there and you were like, frankly, like he didn't care at all. Like he was like, okay, yeah, you got some of the stuff I asked for. Basically, gave some constructive feedback and was like, not very impressed. We'll say that.
Don't quit your day job.
Yeah, uh, yeah. So listen, we can talk about not charisma and being delivering constructive criticism in perhaps a way that's a little bit better than that, but it was motivational, if anything
Yeah,
else.
it
Um,
was.
I think it was also sobering to kind of just hear you know people want what they want, and if you give them more, they didn't want it. They don't care about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's up to you to convince them that no, you do. This is important, and this is why this is so much more valuable, and this is So I think that was also something that I took away from that as well. It's that hey, if we're going to go above and beyond and show them so much more, we got to you know they need to know why they should care about that as well, right? And that goes beyond just that instance, of course. But yeah, so basically, the feedback we got was, I mean, that's cool. Frankly, not that interested in it. And beyond that, I don't even really know what I'm looking at,
Yeah.
right? So I remember we had a discussion being like, you know, these guys are used to looking at stuff a very particular sort of way, right? And we need our work to be, properly designed. It needs to be coherent. We need to think of it almost as user experience design, right? Even though it's not a product, it's information, but it needs to be easily digestible and you know comprehensible to somebody who's looking at it for the first time. So I remember it was something that we kind of joked about, and I mean, I say we joked about, but pretty took it pretty literally in the initial days. Was everything's got to look like we're delivering a pitch deck. It's got
Hmm.
to be super presentable, and there needs to be reasoning, justification along the way, showing our work and results at every step. And I'm hoping this isn't too ambiguous at any point for people listening, but um, that kind of was a catalyst for the version 2 that we developed, and it looked quite a bit different. There was a lot
Hmm.
more visual emphasis. There was a lot more of our kind of methodology kind of like baked into it in terms of documenting our work and our findings. Um, and yeah, I mean, I look at those early boards as kind of the first iterations of the venture map. It's far before the name had surfaced or anything like that. And we kept at it, right? Um, and again, all that we're talking about here is late 2019. I want to say like September forward, something like
Hmm.
that, maybe late September, early October.
Hmm.
And, so we'll fast forward a little bit, unless you had something else that you wanted to discuss, sort of in like that little time window there. Um,
No, I think that's the right thing. That's you've done a great job articulating that moment in time. That's what got us to think we have to change and we have to make it presentable. But also, if we have to be staring at a screen with and working on business stuff all day long, it'd be nice if it looked pretty, you know, not black and white.
100%. Yeah.
So that's when we started coming across like some. That's the earliest memories I have of our discussions and thinking around like remote culture.
Definitely. Yeah. And, in the early days, that looked like, almost treating it as like a sort of like office space. We bring in
Yep.
images and stuff from time to time for inspiration, for laughs sometimes, Um, yeah. And, I remember, one of the big things was, hey, we want our process documentation to look almost like some of the I think we drew inspiration through a lot of like workbooks that we were going through, and we were like,
Hmm.
we don't want this just to be a documentation of the process, but like something that's repeatable, reusable, looks good, right?
Hmm.
Almost like a product in of itself, to where it's like, hey, if some new guy comes on the team and we're like, hey, we need you to do this or produce one of these, they almost have like a walkthrough of it that's like got visuals, examples, questions, all that sort of stuff, instead of just step one, step two, step three. Here's a template, maybe, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and
We went down the rabbit hole on that. That's
no,
when
we did.
the first time I think we did like an ultra learning sprint. I remember we took like 3 days, 4 days, and went through all of Don Miller's brand
That's
story
right.
stuff. That's
A little
what
bit of
set the new board that you're talking about was called the War Room,
that's right.
and we started stacking business. We started stacking brand script, Don Miller's brand script, and guiding principles and funnel wireframe stuff from Marketing Made Simple, Business Made Simple University. All that on top of the strategizer stuff,
Right.
business model, value proposition, and we had to pivot somewhere around this time. I'm blending it, but we lost the tech partners. We lost
Yeah.
probably after the COVID lockdowns. You and I were in this place of saying, okay, no investors, no tech partners, fitness idea. The least we can do is validate a part of it, which would be the online training component. And I remember a combination of words we talked about a lot, which was market competency,
Yes.
being connected to the market and market driven product development. So we thought we'll be really lean, we'll be bootstrapped, and we'll deploy a piece of the overall vision and make it profitable and self fund, use the market to fund the development of the product. And that was movement mastery.
That's right, and that's kind of when that transition took place. And again, I might be muddying the line a little bit, but I see the kind of pre 2020 work being very like strategic, proof of concept, sort of
Yeah.
pitch deck, sort of more oriented into early 2020. And you know, you kind of mentioned it. We faced that dilemma where there was a little bit of a disagreement between some stakeholders, the technology partners, and that fell apart. I want to say like right before the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Frankly, if it didn't, it would have fallen apart when COVID
For
hit
sure.
100%. So, that was coming,
And
whether or not
inevitable.
right before or yeah,
Yeah.
because these guys were from overseas, and with all the lockdown stuff. So of course, our next step was like, okay, so we've got sort of like the model and what we want to build here. So let's get into sort of testing, and if we did want to test something, that kind of brought us into a little bit more of like the marketing and messaging space, right?
Hmm.
Where we went through the Don Miller stuff, sort
Yeah,
of
that's right.
documented that, and like you said, we were going to test it with movement mastery, um, and I think we had some hopes that like down the line, we were also doing some testing with some of those Azure cameras and trying to, me maybe foolishly was attempting to, wrangle some competency in the uh, pose estimation, sort of motion tracking, data collection sort of stuff. And for having like zero experience in that, I think we got some stuff out of it.
But man, I almost forgot about that. But one big driver with that point in time was what we realized that was the need for training data.
Yes.
Right, because as equally as important as it was to demonstrate the desirability of the business model,
Yeah.
being able to frame the offer to a given market segment remote for remote training, which even if we had the fullest extent of the AI capabilities we were envisioning at that time, that was a piece that needed to be validated. Amazing AI or not, just meeting, coming online to Zoom basically and be trained one on one or in a small group with a human coach or an AI persona or a mixture of the two. But one thing I remember we learned the hard way was the requirement of training data, that it needed a pretty significant amount of instances of human movement to develop that standard.
Yeah. Of success and failure, right? To determine where
100%.
that threshold bar for that gold standard was, right?
Yeah.
Indeed.
That's one of the underpinnings of all of the work, even though many times we haven't kept it at the top of mind. I think the knowledge that training data is required, and if I pause our historical review and just come to the current state, if you look through the whole history of the business, I I think even now we are doing that, but instead of human pose estimation, it's the entirety of an organization. We're developing a lens and a scaffolding, a repository by which we can build collect all of the data within an organization and use that as training data for AI models. That's where this is going. I'm getting from the past to the far future, but there's
No,
that common undercurrent.
100%. And I think that is due to the roots of where it started, right?
Yeah,
Was rooted in this sort of data collection, setting a standard, uh, AI utilization. Even in the moments where we weren't utilizing any sort of AI, I remember long, extensive talks about integrating it into our work at the various stages, movement mastery, the early
100%.
conception of venture map, right? I mean, it was always a discussion point, was to how to utilize this and what can this become and what can we do in the meantime to gather data and information to inform AI down the road, right? Um,
Skate to where the puck is going to be.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. So
To
just
bring us
to,
back to War Room, Jack. I'm sorry to interrupt. To bring
no,
us
no,
back
please.
to War Room and the big pivot we took to monetize that, the unexpected turn of
That's
events to sell the map instead of the program we built into the map.
that's where I was headed towards. We had built out that stack of the Don Miller style playbooks, right? Saying like, okay, we like to document it as we built it, right? Just in case we needed to run it back. or
Yeah.
use it for another case, right? Or have someone else do it. And in hindsight, great move. I can't think where we'd be without creating those
Seriously.
playbooks. So, like you said, we had them for project planning, we had them for business modeling and testing and validation. We had them for uh, crafting messaging and marketing materials, marketing collateral, and we had sort of like created this zone where we had all of it because at the end was our materials, right? So that was the place where we went to look at it and use the outputs for various things, right? So um, yeah, I remember, this was when we were developing movement mastery. We were doing the whole, charting the programs out. We were getting content out, and working on an online presence. And I remember, and all the while you were doing personal training, of course. Even before the actual movement mastery, named program, right? This was during lockdown, or yeah, this was already during COVID era, right?
Hmm.
So you were doing
Hmm.
the sort of virtual training and stuff, and uh, I remember you came back and you were like, "Hey, we need to chat." I was, doing training with a client who happens to be a business owner, and I wanted to get her thoughts on what we were building, and of course, we were very excited. Um, and it's funny. This is almost like the opposite of the in the past with at Tech Runway, right? Oh, we're super excited about what we're doing and then get hit with negativity. And in this case,
True.
got hit with an unexpected positive, which was, frankly, was that's cool that you guys are working on that. But what are you guys doing? Like, what am I
Yeah.
looking at? Like on the screen, right? And it was our mural board, right, where we had our sort of playbooks, frameworks, our strategy mapped out. Our the you know roadmap for the program construction and deployment. And she was kind of the first to be like, can you do this for me? Or you guys could sell this probably more effectively than the thing you're working to sell right now. And at that time, like me personally, I had not even remotely considered that, you
Neither did
know,
I.
like maybe other people would be interested in it, but in like terms of like selling it or doing it for others was not even like close to on, I think on either of our radars. Um,
No. It was a
and
means to an end.
again, yeah, 100%. We built it for ourselves because it wasn't anywhere, right? We are like, we
Yeah.
want this. We're finding like bits and pieces and trying to string them together, so
Yeah.
we'll do it ourselves, right? And yeah, I think it took me off guard, but at the time, again, uh, it's interesting to think back to those early COVID days. What seemed like, oh my God, we're going to be on lockdown for a week. I've never heard of anything like that. Right, another week goes by. Oh man, and then the end of the month and be like, it's got to be over now, and then it might be 3 more months, and that feeling of like uncertainty of when things were going to get back to normal, like how long and how severe lockdowns were going to be. It felt like everything was like on pause, right? In terms of, and I'm sure other startups at the time felt the same way, where it's just like, okay, I guess we'll put everything on pause. This will be over soon, and then we get back to work, right? And then it always just became this guessing game of like, how much longer is it going to be like this, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to build a business during that time. Um, Thankfully, what we were working on was kind of we were trying our best to be like, hey, okay, everybody's got to do this stuff remotely, so we'll do it remotely, right?
Yeah.
And coincidentally, the stuff that we were building was not in our office, it was on our computer screens, our virtual
Yeah.
office. And that's something that I kind of glossed over as well, is that when lockdown happened and we weren't in Tech Runway or going to the office spaces we were using, the team rooms and stuff, it was like, okay, this literally is our office now, right?
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
board. So it took a pretty monumental shift there as well, to where it wasn't
Same.
just like individual thing. It really was our workspace. It was almost like logging on to work, right?
Yeah.
Um, at least
Yeah.
that's how I viewed it.
Same.
Um, so sorry, just a little bit of a distraction there, but yeah. So again, yeah, it was like what we had on both sides was remote, so it kind of made sense for the current state of the environment. While everybody was unsure what was going on, people were nervous, and there was mandated lockdowns and stuff. Um, so we were in a position where it was like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Not, we'll take what we can get. Right, if someone's interested, yeah, this will help sustain us for the time being. And I was thinking one-off thing, right? We'll get someone set up with what we have, and that'll then we get back to what we were doing, right, on movement mastery. And so we went through that, got everybody set up with the business that we were working with. We got them set up with a board. We ran through the materials, almost did it kind of like lessons. And I remember initially like, oh, we'll hand over the stuff and they'll be like, sweet. And then it ended up us being them being like, hey, why don't you do it for us? And we're like, okay. So we ended up being a little bit more of thought sparring like partners and actually working with them to develop the materials rather than just providing the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And again, it started to
The
get.
old fashioned way, no GPT involved.
That's right. Yeah. Oh my God. Can you imagine? Yeah. Um, so, and I mean, that was like kind of that turning point where, it went from us doing our own thing to being like, oh, maybe we have something that other people want, and then to actually providing professional services. Right.
Yeah.
And, at the beginning, we weren't really, I mean, I wasn't really even sure what that looked like. Right. Was it consulting? Was it just production of materials and stuff? And I think it's a little bit of both, but certainly was not anything I had ever anticipated doing professionally. You know,
Me neither.
to rewind back to when we met, it was like, okay, yeah, cool. I'll join for this internship opportunity on a startup. Kind of uh, get my feet wet in this sort of space and see if this is something I would want to explore or find, a profession in. But again, that's not, professional services for other business owners, right? It would be very much working within a team to develop an offering for the market. And so that was interesting. And I remember talking to you about it, talking to family about it, and being like, and it got some mixed responses, right? Where, some people saying like focus on your own stuff, don't divert away, to other people saying, hey, this is weird times, take what you can get, right? It
Mm.
doesn't need to be permanent, but if you can put some stuff on pause to work on this and keep the machine going, then yeah, take that opportunity. um and yeah, in working with doing that once, for somebody, we're like, we could probably do that again. We could probably do that for someone else. So took a look around, did it for somebody else, and uh, from there, it was almost like we would develop a new piece or a new offering and be like, anybody want this? We've got confirmation. Sweet, let's run it back, sell it to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and all the meanwhile, as we were providing the services, we were building the next thing, building the next component, doing the next evolution of what would eventually become the venture map. I think at that point it was dubbed the Leviathan because it was getting so massive that we were having to almost reinvent it as we were building it because it was changing so much. And yeah, I hope we still have that board somewhere. I'm sure we do.
We do.
It probably looks a little bit incomprehensible by today's standards, but um, I'm sure very cool to look at. Uh,
I tried rolling on screen share a few times live. That uh, tech isn't cooperating, but I
ah,
think it wouldn't be entirely unreasonable to display some of these boards and post and bring it in as
definitely, yeah.
some B roll to this because
See a
the
time lapse.
yeah, for sure. The Leviathan days. I mean, there was, I don't want to say there were dark days, but there was months of pursuit,
Yes.
intellectual pursuit. I mean, to go, because I remember a discussion you and I had after we had finished the second sale of the incubation framework. And that's
Right.
what War Room was dressed up as, the
Right. That
incubation
initial
project,
offering of
the initial
selling a
offering.
board and its contents. Yeah.
And we thought to ourselves, should we just keep selling this thing, trying to find more people to sell this exact same thing to? And in hindsight, maybe we should have done that, we, you know, but I think one thing that you and I have aligned with from the earliest of days is we're quest guys, we're
Yep.
mission guys, and I believe especially then on the tail end we had a beautiful. We'll put the incubation framework up in post. That we had a beautiful digital product and a
Yep.
hybridized service, a productized service, I should say. But we had some early models of what a full business map would look like, a full venture map. And I remember one of them where we put the incubation framework into the overall early venture map. And it's this tiny piece, even though the incubation framework is no slouch. It took 4 months to go through.
Right. Which,
It took us 4 months to make it through the incubation framework originally, with one deliverable a week, one full like 2 hour long workshop a week. That we chose. I remember a few discussions at least, but to keep pursuing development, to crack the code on the larger model. So there was
100%.
there were
And
some
oh,
dark
go ahead.
days. Sorry, Jack. Dark days in pursuit of that. Many trials and errors.
Definitely. And you're right. I think probably a lot of people would have been like, hey, this worked. Let's just keep doing this. Right. But
Yeah,
again, to us, that was something that we built as a piece of what we were trying to build. Right. And I don't think we wanted to stop what we were doing at any point. Right.
yeah,
So, yeah. And again, you bring up that point in time where it's like, okay, we think we've got the general landscape of what we want. Now let's put in this huge thing, that the thing that we found success in as a whole in of itself. It's just this one tiny piece. Right.
yeah.
And that was intimidating for a number of reasons, because it was like, oh
Daunting.
my god, how much more do we have to build? And also, that's intimidating, right, to even go through, even once it's built, right?
Yes.
But um I mean, yeah, I mean, I can picture those earlier iterations, right, where just monumental and, you know full scope and completely uncharted was the thing. And I think that's why it was so intimidating, was that, it was like, how, what next? Does this just keep getting bigger? So uh, it was a little bit intimidating. And I'm sure there were some evenings where we felt close to madness trying to build out and wrap our heads around this, because, any time spent producing or building in production for us is time not providing services or selling something to somebody, right? So it was almost like this, okay, we've, provided services, now we'll sprint as much as we can to build more. And then, okay, now we'll try to sell something. And we'll sprint, try to keep up and be like, okay, we bought ourselves some time to work on this thing, that sort of mentality. And it was a little bit anxiety inducing, but also very cool to see it evolve and come to life. So, um, yeah, and I mean, I guess it's been years of kind of that rhythm into in some capacity of, you know justifying the further build out of this thing, right?
Yeah.
And again, always maybe selfishly for ourselves, to have it for ourselves. And
Yes.
you know, it's been great to see people see value in it, and to kind of, and as we've gotten better at displaying it and showing it, I think that people can now see what we're seeing, right?
Totally.
I think back to some of those earlier boards, and we're talking something up, and then we show them, and they're like, "No, I'm not doing that. I don't even know what
Yeah.
I'm looking at here." So, I think a lot of it was getting it so honed in and structured and refined that, you know it paints this picture of not only does this make sense, but why would I not do this for myself, right? And I mean, that's the whole reason we're doing it, is because why wouldn't we do this for ourselves, right? It makes sense. We have the tools available to do this. It makes your life way easier. Um, so, I don't want to fast forward, multiple years or anything, but, through various contracts, independent, smaller projects to some spanning a year, working deeply embedded with organizations, all of our work, even though it's never, in some instances it wasn't, hey, we're selling them a venture map. We were taking bits and pieces that we had done for ourselves and selling
Yeah.
them for the needs that that person had in the moment, right? Whether that was, quarterly planning, right, or developing, marketing materials, designing, websites and customer experiences. Um, all of those were pieces of stuff that we had, and we had it all documented for ourselves, so that, not only could we say, hey, we can do this, it's like, hey, take a look, we're going to build this out for you, and in the process learn this and this, produce this and this, and not only that, it's going to be usable moving forward to tweak, refine, and streamline into something that is, as automated as possible, as, the user experience is refined as possible. We reduced, the uh, operational demands as much as possible, because I mean that's kind of the goal. I think back to the early days, like the first iterations of, I guess, what we were calling the venture map, and I've always kind of looked at it as almost like a machine with, we've joked about it in the past, with almost like fuel cells attached to it, right? We've got the
Yeah.
means of production and, um, stuff fueling the strategy, stuff fueling the messaging, all this sort of stuff, and then the actual utilization of it over time. And it's never felt like something where, okay, we built something, sweet, we're done with that. I think we've revisited almost every element. Probably, some people probably say, oh, I do that sort of stuff year to year. I feel like since we have visibility of it constantly, that we're constantly tweaking, refining, adjusting, pivoting as we pivot, right? And it's avoiding that, you know thing where in the past, where, you make a bunch of pivots and adjust, and it almost feels like starting from scratch again because everything's outdated, right? And to some degrees, yeah, I mean, that's a given that that's going to happen, and we've experienced that in some capacity. But, um, yeah, and I mean, through the years of working with other business owners on the various projects, it's only helped to reinforce our learnings on, not only what was potentially missing, but what also other people found valuable that maybe we hadn't considered or didn't think it needed that much of an emphasis. So yeah, it's been a it's been a pretty wild journey to where we're at now, and I don't know if it's exciting or daunting, but I don't see the evolution of it stopping anytime soon. So,
Yeah.
until we get our dream smart business that's using all of this documented repository of information, contextual, external, environmental information, and we're able to talk to it like it's a person.
Till the business is alive,
Indeed, indeed,
self-aware and self-improving.
yeah, 100%. And what's funny is, a few years ago, that idea would have seemed like some sort of far off sci-fi concept, but
Yeah.
in the past few years, and especially like this past year, some of the stuff that we're seeing, it's like, not only is this possible, it's how many people are working on this and have the same idea, right? In some
Yeah.
capacity. Not, I'm pretty confident that nobody's doing it the way we're doing it, because we haven't seen it yet. But
Yes.
I think people are working towards, what we're talking about, to integrate, you know, AI almost in a more personalized capacity, a contained capacity within an organization to serve, multiple purposes beyond just
Yes.
automations and, text generation or image generation too. for
and beyond chatbot
100%.
abilities. Like
Yeah.
it's a chatbot that knows all of your FAQs or a chatbot that knows all of your SOPs. It's like that's a fantastic piece, and we're seeing players emerge onto the scene with those capabilities.
Right. Yeah.
But all of that combined and more.
Oh yeah. 100%. And I think that's a perfect example of kind of like where the space is at now, right?
Yeah.
But I think that we've been so much more focused, like fiercely focused on where's this going to be in 5 years, right? A couple years ago, I would have said 10 years, but this stuff is accelerating so fast that,
Yeah.
we look 5 years into the future, you know, the chat GPT, mid journey, all these AI tools are, basically in their like infant stage, like in testing to the general populace, right?
Hmm.
uh, the way I see it is, when ChatGPT launched for free to do all this sort of stuff, that was basically just user testing to gauge the reaction, to stifle any panic of AI taking over, right? You're seeing it, but now, it's less about, oh my God, this is wild and crazy and scary. Now people are concerned, like, well, okay, well, what does that mean for students using it for school and, you know, artists being, I don't want to say unrightfully upset. I think a lot of people are rightfully upset and saying, hey, this is taking my job. It's lower quality, all that sort of stuff. But time and time again, we've seen that, you know, automations and convenience, win out, right? When assembly lines and factories swapped to machines, a bunch of people lost their jobs. Now we're seeing with the AI space, it's, yeah, you're in a position to lose your job, but in reality, the whole thing is, well, how are you going to master this tool and benefit from it, right?
Hmm.
Use it to your advantage, or be a differentiated factor by not using it. I guess in some instances, it's a little bit of a tangent there, but you know, this space is evolving, and we're seeing the direction that it's headed, and I think now, we talked about skating to where the puck is going to be. Now is definitely the time for businesses large and small to be consolidating and organizing information, not just data, but strategy, marketing, narrative and stuff. Being able to be prepared to say, hey, a couple years from now or whenever, when the capabilities are here to basically input all of your business information into a you know an AI that's not this open source sort of everybody accessing the same one, but something a little bit more personalized. Um, the ones who are prepared to capitalize on that are going to accelerate very fast and with not a lot of people as well. We're going to see some organizations that are really just like a couple people, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's the case now, obviously, but um, I'm thinking on a larger scale for sure. So I guess where we're coming to that is, that's always been a driving factor behind what we're doing, for ourselves as well. And
100%.
I think we'd be more than happy to provide that to other people as well. But first and foremost, we're doing what we think is best to prepare ourselves and take advantage of the technology that's coming.
This feels like part one of
Yeah, I've,
at least a two-part, a multi-part discussion.
yeah. Perhaps the origin story turned a little bit into future telling.
Oh,
So,
I think that was a natural transition from where we were to where we're at now
yeah,
and where we're seeking to take it. I feel like if we plant the flag here in our next discussion, we can bring up more. We can start with more about where we are
definitely.
and also where we think it's going, and not just our project, but the trends in general.
That sounds great. Absolutely. I would love to continue this on another episode. Again, hopefully the first of many to come. Uh, we've got no shortage of stuff to talk about. So if people are willing to tune in and listen, more than happy to do this again.
Me too. Thanks for coming on the line and sharing the story. And it was nice hearing your point of view and some details of the origin story that I forget or that were hazy to me. And it's
Likewise.
been a pleasure working with you over the last almost half decade, man.
Same
Truly a
here, man.
pleasure.
It is. It has been quite the journey, and when I look back, uh, I'm certainly glad that things panned out the way they did. That we got a chance to work together for so long, and hopefully for many years in the future as well.
I
Um,
agree.
this was a good time. It was very nostalgic for me as well. Hearing you bring up some of the stuff again, that I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's very cool. So again, thanks. It was a great idea doing this.
Appreciate it, man. To those of you who watched all the way through, listened all the way through, thanks for joining us. We recognize that your time and attention are valuable. If you're interested in seeing more about what Jack and I have been discussing over the course of this hour or so, you're welcome to check it out at our website, venturemap.io, or in the link below, you can find access to our Venture Map template in Miro and Notion completely free. Jack and I are in the camp of give away the method for free, sell the implementation. And more than that, we're actually giving away the implementation to a very few select case study clients right now. So if you are interested in having us help you build out a large portion of your venture map for free as one of our case study clients, we'd love to connect with you. You can contact us through the website or simply drop a comment below and we'll reach out. Thanks again for your time, attention, and Jack, as always, it's a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise, man.
I'll see you in the next one.